This morning, we are checking in with our country's 20th Prime Minister. Jean Chrétien won 3 consecutive Liberal majority governments, serving from 1993 to 2003. Part of his retirement has been spent writing books, and he's back with Volume 2 of My Stories, My Times. The Right Honourable Jean Chrétien joins us this morning. Welcome back to your morning.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm glad that you're with us this morning. I want to start with the latest headlines involving your comments on residential schools. Before you were Prime Minister, you were Minister of Indian Affairs, and you've said that you weren't informed of any abuse at residential schools at that time. So did you or anyone in your department knowingly receive reports of abuse or letters of abuse happening at any residential school in Canada?
Not that I know of, and I checked with people who worked with me at that time, and they said they had not heard about it either. So when I was Prime Minister, we were involved necessarily because we started to pay compensation for the victim of this terrible occurrence. But at the time I was a minister, I was not aware of it at all.
Well, we know now that there was abuse. Thousands of survivors continue to share their experiences, and many are asking, how could you not know?
Because I did not know. You know, I was a minister, and that became known only later. And when I was Prime Minister, it was the Times who started to compensate the people who were the victim of these terrible incidents.
Mr. Chrétien, knowing what you know now and what much of the country knows now, do you feel any responsibility for what happened in residential schools while you were the Minister of Indian Affairs?
No, because the system started at the beginning of Canada. It was a system where education was given to the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church, and that system worked for, 70 years before I became the minister, and the last school was closed when I was Prime Minister.
Knowing what you know now, do you feel any regret over the abuses that occurred in residential schools?
But I cannot have regret on things that I did not know about, and when I learned about it, I started to do things, and my government were involved in paying compensation for the poor victims of these incidents.
Mr. Chrétien, I'm curious about something, and I want you to be able to clarify it for us. Did you mean to compare your experience in boarding school with the experience of children who survived or did not survive residential school?
No, I was talking about residential school, and I don't know how that came about, but I said I was in residential school, so I know about that system. It was the same system that existed for us. And so I explained my experience. I was in a boarding school since the age of 6 until the age of 21. So I knew about, and it was done by the same priests and nuns that I had to be with for that long time.
But of course, you understand.
For me,
go ahead.
But for me, I wanted to talk about the system that I knew about more than anybody else.
But you... go ahead.
So that's it.
But you understand that your experience in boarding school, a school that your parents chose to send you to, and the purpose of it was to,
and I didn't want to go there either.
You didn't want to go there, but you weren't taken from your family and sent there.
No, we were obliged to go there. If you were not living in a city where there was a college, we had to be in a boarding school. Everybody of my generation who went to become a doctor, lawyer, engineers, and priests, and so on, had to go to ever be the BA in the institution that we used to call it the séminaire. We had no choice. So I hated that much that I had to change 3 times of colleges, and it was not. But it's where I had my education, and I'm happy with the education I had because it helped me to be what I am today.
And just to clarify once more before we move on, you did not mean to compare your experiences at boarding school with what was experienced by children at residential school.
But I talk about what was to be in a residential school. I've been there from 6 to 21. So, it was what I talk about.
The last residential school closed while you were in office as Prime Minister, and mass graves of children are still being discovered. What can and should the current government be doing in order to move forward?
But, we have to compensate the victims, and we are doing that since we were doing that. Perhaps it started before I was Prime Minister, but we knew that we compensated a lot of people at that time. And there was court cases that were taken against the religious institutions. And, we were involved. And in terms of the future, of course, as I say, we cannot, we can offer our sympathy and apologize when it's needed, but the problem is the future. I was always preoccupied about the future. As I said, there was only 15 to 20 students graduating from university from the Indian background, and later on, before I finished my term there, after 6 years and a half, there was hundreds and thousands who started to get out of university, and and we have to give them the chance to be in the society. The first. Len Marchand was the first MP, and he became my parliamentary secretary, and after that he became Minister of the Environment after a few years with me in Industry, Trade, and Commerce. So, it's education, and what they need is opportunities, and they need economic activities, and to have, the same chance than the others. And, I was involved in all these debates all my life. And I always, when I was minister, I cut the budget of every department. There was only one department that we did not cut at all, was the Department of Indian Affairs. And it's a long time after I was Minister of Indian Affairs. I cut every department. I cut even the office of the wife of the Prime Minister to zero. But the only department that was not touched was the Department of Indian Affairs. And I'm very proud of it.
Mr. Chrétien, let's move on to Canada's relationship with China, and specifically the incident of the two Michaels, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. You write in this book about being consulted by the current government in terms of what to do in this situation. And in the book, you speak about having a conversation with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that left you, quote, simply dumbfounded. What happened during that conversation?
But, the problem is not, what I talk about. It was a problem with his staff. And, they said, don't worry, on Monday it will be, we'll fix it. And it was not fixed. And I knew that I was consulted by people from China too, because when I was Prime Minister, we had very good relation with China. Joe Guranji had said one time Canada was the best friend of China. And we had Team Canada, 500 businessmen and, president of universities and others traveling with me and all the premiers to China twice and to build good relations. Because Mr. Trudeau, the father, had recognized China before many of the other nations. Mm-hmm. And now China is a reality. It's going to be a hell of a big power. And we have to have, we can disagree on many things, as I explained in the book. Mm-hmm. I was, one day I was the first leader ever to make a speech in public, about human rights in Beijing, in front of crowds and students and TV and so on. And I did the same thing in front of the Association of the Judges of China in Shanghai later on. So, but we have to disagree from time to time, but we have at the same time to realize that they are part of the modern economy. We are interrelated. A lot of pieces are coming for everything you do from China, and they need things from us, to operate. And it is because of globalization that now everything is made all around the world, and we have to compete. But if we look, the world is much richer now that China is involved, because when China was doing nothing, now they produce a lot, and they create a lot of wealth that is... There's millions and millions of people who are traveling from China now that they have money, and they sell to us, and we buy, right, and we sell to them, and they are part, and they have a superpower. And when you have a superpower, you use it. Our neighbors in the South were not absolutely shy to use their power, so they will. So we have, as a country, to find a position that is acceptable, and that it is in the what is in the best interest of Canada. And of course, we will have disagreement on the way they run their country. They are communists, and we're not. So, it's not because I would have, as I said many times, you know, I said, you want me to go to China to tell them what to do? A billion, 300 million people, Canada with 37, 38 million, to tell them what to do. But, you know, you don't want the Prime Minister of Canada to tell a Premier what to do. When there's that, you have to respect their jurisdiction and all that. You know, life is very complicated for everybody. And we have to navigate, but it is in the interest of everybody that we eliminate as many as possible the irritant that exists and try to develop more wealth around the globe. And after that, to work very hard to have a better redistribution of wealth. They have the problem in China. We have the problem here.
Yeah.
And it's something that we have to do in the interest of all.
Mr. Chrétien, this is live, so unfortunately we are down to our last couple of minutes. I want to end this interview the way where you start this book, which is with your wife, Aileen. And something that's very apparent in every line that you write about her, and every caption under the photographs, is your admiration, your respect, and your very deep love for the woman that you called your Rock of Gibraltar. You lost your wife of 63 years in September of 2020. What has the last year been like for you without her?
Oh, it's very difficult. Now I get used a bit. It is almost 14 months, but she was such a big part of my life. And as if you read in the book, you know, she was a great advisor to me. She was quiet, but she was a great observer, and she made me, you know, she was able to tell me the truth without offending me. And, you know, I would not have been Prime Minister without her. And, you know, I wanted people to know that it was a joint venture in many ways. But she didn't want to be on the stage. She would tell everybody, no, there is only one on the stage. She was not interested to have publicity. She was a person who wanted to be on her own and live the life of ordinary people. She came from you know, the difficulties of the 30s, and she lived in a difficult part of the city, and she was telling me I would get out of there, and apparently she got out of there pretty well. And
she was right.
And she was, you know, according to testimonies by every day, when unfortunately she left too early, you know, everybody was praising her.
Mr. Chrétien.
And I'm very, very proud of her. And all my family, too. We were very lucky to have
I'm so sorry, Mr. Chrétien. We have to go, but I want to thank you for your time, and it was great to speak with you again this morning. Take care.
Thank you.
Be
It's
well.
always a pleasure. Nice to see you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.